think what people forget is being able to partake in CrossFit is a privilege, and that's not available to a lot of us. When people ask me, what I'm most nervous about at the CrossFit Games, like, of course, there's this intimidation about thinking that you're going to be close to your idols, but then I just think that would be my luck, that my dad would probably tune in those 2 minutes that I get any airtime and see that I have a bunch of tattoos that he doesn't know about, and I can only imagine how disappointed he would be. It's the first time maybe that having a Pakistani passport has proved to be this worthwhile, and so I don't know if anybody would trade nationality with me to get, that winning. But I can understand that, there are people who look at me and think, oh, well, I'm better than her, and they are, and there are people better than them. My name is Mishka Murad, and I'm from Karachi, Pakistan, and I qualified to go to the CrossFit Games because I am the national champion, one of the national champions of Pakistan. And I've been doing CrossFit for almost 5 years now. So for the last 3 years, I've been a PhD student, and for the last year, I've been an athlete at Norwottuck CrossFit in Hadley, Massachusetts. The changes in the CrossFit Games allowed for the removal, I guess, of regionals, and now has opened up doors for national champions to come forward and actually make it to the CrossFit Games, which is a massive difference because at the beginning when regionals was around, you still had to be within the top 100 to even get a chance to compete at various geographic locations, but now you just have to be the best in your country. And I say just have to be the best in your country, but sometimes that alone is really tough. Today we're going to do a Tabata workout, which is 4 minutes of 20 seconds of work with a 10-second interval, followed by another 20 seconds of work, and so on. And the movements we're going to be doing are an ab rollout using a barbell and weights. We're going to be doing a yoke hold, and we're going to be doing a Copenhagen star plank using a bench. While it's common to do sit-ups and crunches, these are fun and challenging alternatives to those movements, and it's something that you can do that is going to get your core burning really quick.
Welcome to Tabata. Are you ready? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
It's kind of surreal to be the national champion because on the one hand, I'm really proud of my achievements, and I know personally that a year ago, I would not have been able, even if this process had occurred last year, I would not have been the national champion just because I wasn't putting in the work, I wasn't working as hard. So there's definitely I've stepped up my game in order for me to get there. But I'm also aware that that doesn't mean as much as being the American national champion or the national champion of the UK. And so when people ask me how it feels, I always say, yeah, it's great, but I know I'm not going to win because of the negativity that's come with it. I almost have to placate them and say, oh, well, I still know my place and I'm not good enough, when I feel like I should be more appreciative and more excited about this opportunity. When I was 12, I was sitting on the sidelines while the boys in my class were participating in sports at school, and I was told that it wasn't modest for girls to run, and they had to support men and support boys, and that was their job. I remember being allowed out of my math class multiple times in a row because my teacher told me I didn't need to learn any math because my husband would give me a certain amount of money and I would go buy groceries, and if it wasn't enough, then the cashier would let me know. So there are these very obvious gender stereotypes that I grew up with, and luckily I was born to parents who did not follow them, did not ascribe by them, and wanted their 3 daughters to be really headstrong, which is what we ended up being. But upon moving back, it was a little bit different because going to Mount Holyoke College, which is a super liberal school where, human rights, women's rights are a very big deal. Going back to Pakistan, where it was a time when there would still be moments in a classroom setting where my students' phones would go off and they would say, oh, well, there was a bombing near my house, I have to go home, or there was a shooting near my house. It was just not the life that I wanted for myself. And I think above all things, you associate home as a place of being safe. And for that reason, I was really struggling in Pakistan because it wasn't a place that I felt safe. Sexual harassment, whether it's verbal or physical, is common. And I'm saying that as a woman who is extremely privileged, who has been privileged to live abroad, study abroad, belong to a great house. Like my parents were really careful about how I was treated, but even then, those were the norms of my life, and I just knew that I didn't want that forever. So in Pakistan, I would say that things are definitely changing, but as they are changing, you know, there's obviously some pushback. So women are dressing in ways that they are more comfortable. You see a lot more women wearing Western clothes, wearing jeans, etc. But it depends on which part of the country you're in. And just because you dress a certain way or you think that you are free to dress a certain way does not mean somebody's not going to pass comments or touch you inappropriately or say something inappropriate to you. So it's sort of this double-edged sword where on the one hand you're getting to make these choices more, but on the other hand it's coming at a cost. Also, traditionally, you know, the expectation is that you, even if you get an education, at some point you'll want to get married and you'll want to settle down, and that's what you want. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I just think that we need to have other opportunities presented to us. And something like CrossFit, for example, or just the idea, the act of lifting weights is still something that is slowly picking up. But even now, the idea is just that, you know, you want to be feminine. You want to still take up as little space as possible. And I just don't fit into those ideas. When I came back to the United States in 2016 to start my PhD, my experiences have been very different since then than they were in 2003 when I was in the U.S. studying for my undergraduate degree because of the difference in political climate that we have now. It's been rough, and I don't necessarily think that it's because I'm Pakistani. It's because because nobody knows you're Pakistani when you're walking down the street. They just know that you're a person of color. And in many ways, once I open my mouth, people will often say to me, oh, well, we still wouldn't guess that you're Pakistani because you speak English so well, or because you get, you know, our Americanisms, if you will. And so there's this, they don't realize what they're saying, but you're dealing with this ignorance where people think all Pakistanis are the same, and I'm not sure what that same is. I'm not sure if it's what they see on the media and what they read about, but obviously we're not all the same. And so I constantly am dealing with those stereotypes, and even during classes we'll answer questions like, oh, well, how does your father allow you to do this, assuming that all men in Pakistan are evil and, you know, hold extremely dominant positions, when that's not true. A lot of men want their wives, their daughters, to be successful. So it's been difficult, but more so based on how I've looked, and I've definitely I've heard things been said to me in passing when somebody's driving by or somebody's passing by, and it's usually related to the color of my skin. Or I've heard things said by professors or faculty, you know, where they think you're an international student, so you just need to slum it and you just need to be shopping at Goodwill and you don't get to have a life because you came to the US and people sort of here saved you by taking you in. And it's really quite rough because on the one hand, you're not getting the kind of respect you hope you would just by virtue of being a person and being a PhD student. And on the other hand, I can see people back home in Pakistan saying, but she's so lucky, what is she complaining about? And she's not, I would argue that there are probably people back home who probably don't even see me as being Pakistani because I haven't lived there in so many years. And so there's a backlash from there's a backlash here, and again, it's sort of just like trying to belong when you know that you don't, or trying to belong when you're not sure where exactly it is that you belong. I think part of it is that when you look at my rankings, and now everybody's going to go look at my rankings on the CrossFit leaderboard, I am very low down in terms of, you know, women in my age group. And there are people at this box, there are people at every box that I've been to who might have qualified had they held my nationality. Am I going with a chip on my shoulder? Do I think that I am the best person in the box that I come from? Absolutely not. I learned that every single box I go to, there's always people better than you, there's always people stronger than you. But I think it's just been difficult because even people who were once supportive are sort of withdrawing because there is this level of competition. Somehow, we learn that success, that if I'm successful, that somehow takes away from somebody else's success, as if there's sort of some limit to how much success and joy there is in the world, and for that reason, I think, you know, people are even competitive with things like success, and that's been something that I've had to learn. While the changes in the CrossFit qualifications has allowed for athletes with different from different countries to be able to compete in the CrossFit Open, there is still the question of whether or not they will be able to attend. And that has a lot to do with finances and just travel difficulties. The first one being whether or not they'll get visas, and visas aren't free either. I'm very fortunate that I'm studying in the US, but even so, I am responsible for my airfare. There is a registration fee that you have to pay if you want to go to the CrossFit Games. You have to show up earlier than you're participating by a couple of days to register. And so you're responsible for the accommodation for all those days that you're there. And then there's the groceries, and once you're no longer an athlete, you're also responsible for buying your own ticket to sort of stay in the venue and be able to see the others compete. So I can understand why and how it might be very difficult for some people to get here, especially if they're residing in other countries. One of my friends started a fundraiser for my journey to Madison because it is expensive, not just the ticket and the Airbnb, but being able to pay for groceries the entire week you're there, registration, all of that stuff. And people have contributed. Some people have contributed anonymously, for which I am extremely grateful. I just like to say that for the people that have been really supportive in terms of my journey, and have reached out to me to ask how my training is going and have been really supportive, I am super appreciative. I would not have made it this far without my coaching. Thanks to Rob, who did my coaching all of last year, where I just basically spent all my time working on my weaknesses in order to even be able to qualify as a national champion. And now to my coach Damien, who's helping getting me ready for the games in the best way possible. So it's really not, I've put in the effort, sure, but I've had guidance every step of the way, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without those people. And I remember one of my least favorite open WOD was 19.1, which I did 5 times. And Rob was there every single one of those times because I wanted to make sure that I had the best score. And so one of those times it was 9 p.m. at night, so he kept the box open, he stayed back for me, and he made sure that he was my judge, that we had everything, because we had to film the video as well to submit it. So we had everything set up, ready to go, and if not for his dedication, none of that would have been possible, because doing that WOD 5 times was pretty terrible. I really love the fact that even if I don't see myself, and I'm definitely not an elite athlete, I get to train the way they would, with my own little meager weights and whatever, but I get to put in these double sessions a day. I get to work really hard, and I'm honestly enjoying the journey, and I might not be there for a really long time in Madison, but I'm going to be there for a good time, and it's my every effort just to make sure that the people who have invested in me, whether it's emotionally or financially or whatever way, that I make them proud. Like that's really important to me.